Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the Financial Commute. Patrice Benning, Wealth Advisor here at Morton Wealth, is joining me in a conversation where we're going to talk about buying or leasing a car.
I have
Patrice,
opinions.
what do you prefer? Do you prefer buying or leasing cars?
Well, if I am going to go after that, McLaren that I was talking to you about, I'll probably have to be a lease because it's either that or I sell my house. So it depends,
Yeah.
Chris. I think the answer is depends.
I personally like leasing because I love the technology and the advancements that go with that. But it also scares me with how much cars are now computers. And when you own something for a really long time, like the repairs could be outrageous, but then you get stuck into this cycle of perpetual leasing, and the cost can just be exorbitant. So I know that this is a topic that comes up for clients from time to time. Hey, should I buy or lease my next car? And you're right, it really depends. So tell me, what was your first car?
We're gonna go there. Okay,
Hmm.
great. First car, 1985 Hyundai that I owned, and it was $500. And if you must know, I had to crank up and down the window. But my pride and joy of that car was that I had a Panasonic radio that I could pop out and I would take with me because I was afraid somebody was going to break into my car and steal it, which eventually did when I went to school one day. I left, I forgot to pop it out. But it
I think I had
honestly,
one of those. It was
yes,
in the mid 90s. Yeah.
yes, it was.
Yeah.
Thanks for dating me. Anyways, it was truly something that I took pride in, even though it was an old car. But it was also I knew it was my first car.
Yeah.
But when I think in hindsight, it it set me up for I am truly an owner of cars now. All of our cars are I've held them for a long time. I did lease once, and that was because I wanted to have a nicer car, and I didn't know if I was willing to commit to it. So we did the luxury car experience before children, and that was fun.
Yeah.
But I would say overall, if you ask me, I've owned cars for a decade or more now,
As opposed to leasing.
as opposed to leasing.
Yeah. My first car, my older brother technically totaled before I got my driver's license. My
Right.
parents bought us a really rundown um, old BMW. I think it had over 100,000 miles on it. This was 1995. And I think it was an early 1980s BMW, and it was fun. But he ended up totaling it. So I just shared a car with my mom. But my mom would lease cars. And so I got to do the errands and drive nice cars because I shared with my mom. So it wasn't too bad. But I got the enjoyment out of liking to drive nice cars. And I remember our neighbor across the street, he owns a Ford dealership down in San Diego. And he said to me one time, I said, Mark, I just can't seem to afford the kind of car that I want. And he just laughed. He said, well, make more money or get a job. So I think I was in college and I didn't have a job. But he told me something that's kind of stuck with me today. He says, Chris, always remember that your next car will be your most expensive car, even if it's the same one. So if you get a Ford Explorer today and it's $30,000 and you drive it for 7 years, that Ford Explorer is not going to be $30,000 in 7 years. It's going to be more than that. So just be aware of that and be mindful. And I always thought that that was pretty interesting.
Well, I think when you and I were talking about this earlier, you had one comment that I never, a statistic that I never knew, well, not statistic, but kind of fun fact to keep in mind is that your monthly payment should not be more than 1% of the value of the car. Is that right? Or how
Well,
does that work?
there's like a rule of thumb with leasing, and I don't know if this still holds true today. I mean, some of the research that I did for this episode, I think it still holds true, but car payments have gotten outrageous. So I believe this still holds true. So if you're going to lease a car,
Mhm.
to identify at the forefront whether or not you're getting a good deal, your lease payment should be 1% or less of the purchase price. So for example, if your lease payment is $300 a month and the car is worth $30,000, you're getting a really good deal. If your lease payment is $700 a month and your car value, the MSRP is $40,000, you're not getting a good deal at all. And in fact, I got a really good deal on a lease a number of years ago. This was almost 10 years ago. I remember specifically um, because I really wanted this car and I couldn't afford it if I bought it outright. But the car price was like $35,000 MSRP if I was to buy it.
Mhm.
The lease payments were around 270 a month, so let's call it $3,000 a year. It was a 3-year lease, 12,000 miles a year At the time, I was not driving more than 12,000 miles a year. So I looked at it and said, okay, I'm going to pay $9,000 over the next 3 years for leasing this car. And the buyout at the end of the 3-year lease was around $18,000. So I felt like I got a phenomenal deal. I'm getting a $35,000 car that I'm paying $9,000 for 3 years to drive. And instead of having a $26,000, balance left, I was able to buy, I had the option to buy it out for 18. And so at the end of that lease, I had the ability to buy that car for 18, even though Kelly Blue Book said it was worth like 22,500. So I was able to buy that car from the dealership and then have instant equity that I could sell it back to the dealer and have cash in my pocket to go get a new car. It was one of the few times that leases really worked out in my favor.
So I think the only caveat to that, which I did similar to you, but what I ended up doing is financing that payout amount, the buyout amount. So I ended up making 7 years worth of payments, and I definitely paid way more than the car was worth by the time. But now I have that car for a very long time. But you were a planner all along, Chris. I like that.
I don't know. I've always liked numbers. So I mean, some of the pros and cons around leasing, if you're driving a lot of miles, it said in the research something around the average person drives around 13,000 miles a year. So if you get a lease and it's a 12,000 mile per year lease, you probably don't want to lease because you're going to end up with extra costs at the end of the lease for extra miles. The wear and tear is something to take into consideration. You might have scratches or different things that might be surprise costs at the end of the lease. Um, and then if you're somebody that wants to own a car for a really long time, a lease might not make very much sense to you either.
That's
Um,
true. Well, I'm in the position of having teenagers, and I really thought about this because I thought that insurance on a older car would be cheaper, but it's quite the opposite actually, because the older the car, the more prone it is to breaking down. So and then not the fact that I have boys, not girls. Boys drive a lot more aggressively, and they're prone to more accidents than girls. You learned that. So
Teenage boys.
teenage
Yeah,
boys.
because my wife drives much more aggressive than I do.
I'm right. She's listening to this, right? So I think it's also I think the going back to your point, the features of having I don't think a new car for a new driver is ideal, but I think a 2-year-old car would be great because you still get to benefit from the technology advancements. But I'd say I think the statistic is that 43% of first year drivers get into accidents in their first year and
Wow.
37% in their second. So keep that in mind as you buy or lease a car.
It's interesting. I mean, there's a lot of costs and things to consider when you're deciding whether to buy or lease. If you're going to lease, you're going to have to carry higher insurance coverage amounts on that lease than maybe if you bought it, or if it was a car that was older, you could lower those amounts. The other thing is gap coverage. I mean,
Mm.
when you lease a car or when you buy a car, if you don't put down a hefty down payment, you have negative equity almost instantly when you drive off the lot. And so gap coverage is that insurance coverage that says, hey, if I was to get into an accident, my car's worth 50,000, but I owe 60, it's going to make up that difference. So that way I don't still owe money for this car that I just totaled, right? And I've found that it's actually cheaper to get gap coverage insurance through your personal insurance company like Geico than at the dealership when they're trying to sell you on all those extras.
See, I wish I knew this when I got my cars in the past because number one, I had zero gap insurance, knock on wood. Nothing happened, but I said no to everything the dealer tried to sell me on, not even understanding the benefit that was probably offered to me. But I also did not inquire with my insurance company, especially if you have young drivers, if you're going to get a loan on your car, you're going to finance it, gap coverage is essential.
Yeah, gap coverage is one of those unique things that I think is important. I mean, when it comes to leasing or buying a car, I mean, there's so many factors to take into consideration, whether it's technology, payment, life. I mean, you might be going through a change in your life where your need for a short period of time is a bigger or smaller car, one with more features or less. Or you may have had a car for a really long time and you're just not sure what type of car you're going to like because cars have changed so much. So you just want to try one out with having the option to buy it in case you like it. Oftentimes dealerships have big incentives for leasing these days mainly because they want to get you on that perpetual cycle of having a continuous car payment and repeat buyers over time. I'm always blown away by how that works out. Um, I was always told to negotiate the price of the car, not the monthly payment. Because if you go in there and say, I can only afford this per month, there's a lot of levers that they can pull with regards to financing, leasing versus buying. And by the end of it, you're just exhausted. And you might just say yes, just so you can get in a car and actually leave and not be really confident in the decision that you just made.
Very true. And I
Yeah.
think to your point, the when we leased that one luxury car, we had an Audi, which I really loved. But they sold me on you're gonna pay this amount for 2.5 years. And by the way, everything's included. The oil changes, the maintenance. There was also zero money down. But in hindsight, I could have probably negotiated because it wasn't the top of the line car or anything like that. It was probably the lowest model, but I was content. But I did not try to negotiate. So that's such a great point.
I don't know what it is, but I'm built to negotiate cars. My most recent car purchase was my wife's Volvo, the XC90. So we had another child, so we had to get a bigger SUV. And a few years ago, as we were kind of evaluating this purchase, I looked at several different Volvo dealerships around LA, San Diego, and Orange County, and I tried to look for the model and the color that I was looking for, and scanned their websites to see who had the most inventory, and then I shopped them against each other so that way I could get the best deal. I ended up getting about $5,000 or $6,000 off the MSRP price. But then because I'm a partner here at Morton and my wife's a business owner, we were able to use that Section 179 and depreciate the entire cost of the car in that first year. So a lot of tax savings there, which I know at the end of the year or the beginning of every year, you tend to see a lot of new cars around this area. Typically, business owners are taking advantage of some of those tax benefits.
So you can do that both, right? If you lease a car as a business owner, you can actually write off the lease payments, obviously talk to your tax advisor
Yeah.
as a business expense, but owning the car outright offers you a different kind of a tax benefit.
Correct. Yeah, that Section 179 depreciation. I think the rules have changed now, but again, talk to your tax advisor because we were lucky that our car or that
Mhm.
SUV was over the gross vehicle weight of 6,000 pounds, and it qualified for this special tax treatment that we were able to take advantage of a few years ago. But I enjoyed the game of evaluating the car that I wanted, looking at the different dealerships to see who had the most inventory. And then I think other articles sort of say go towards the end of the month when dealerships need to hit their quota. Back then, interest rates were really low, so I was able to get 0.9% financing for 5 years. I know interest rates are much more different today, which makes the cost of buying a car or leasing even more difficult for people. But always shop around for those specials, the specials with financing, or even trying to look at the inventory and kind of play people off each other.
So car hustler should go on your business card next.
I don't
Folks,
know,
you
but
know who to call now.
I don't know about that. We talked a little bit about some of the pros with leasing. You don't have to own it for a long
Mhm.
time. You get updated technology, creates flexibility, lower monthly payments. You have to be aware of some higher costs. What are some of the benefits of a long-term owner of cars? Do you think? Do you think you realize?
For me, personally, knowing that I will not have to make payments after a while is so amazing. So the peace of mind that gives me, and I would say for a while you ride that wave pretty good until the car reaches a point where you have to now start reinvesting back into it. But every time I'm thinking if it breaks down, you've got apparently rodents like wires inside cars. So when you have to go through that and you spend $3,600 and you say, well, that's a $300 a year payment, but if I were to get rid of my car, can I even get a $300 payment for you? So to your point, my next car is going to be my next expensive car. So you have to think as much as that stings in the moment. And over time, I'm still better off if I plan to hold on to my car for a decade,
Yeah.
which I have. I'm making less payments than if you were to switch your car every 2 to 3 years and have to make continuous payments. Yes, you might have a nicer car than me, but you're making more payments than me, Chris.
Definitely a lot more money out of pocket. Fortunately, I own both my cars today, but I plan on owning them for a very, very long time unless, something comes up and things change. But at the end of the day, if you're looking to make your next purchase, lease or buy your next car, please reach out to us here at Morton Wealth. We'd be happy to engage in a conversation about what makes sense for you. I remember my cousin, who is a very good saver, always tell me, never buy a new car. I always buy a car that's 2 years old, that has low miles, and then I own that for a really long time. And I don't know. I think that still holds true today.
But you won't get that fresh new car scent though, Chris.
This is true. That is a good smell.
That is a good smell.
Even the car washes have. Do you want that new car smell? And it's never the same.
No.
Yeah. Patrice, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Chris.